Millions prepare for the polls in Nigeria. The president wants a second term, but how far is he willing to go to get it? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Muhammadu Buhari. Nigeria is set to hold Africa's biggest election ever, with more than 70 presidential candidates campaigning for 80 million registered voters. Last time around, Muhammadu Buhari made history, becoming the first opposition candidate to ever unseat an incumbent. And that's exactly what challenger Atiku Abubakar is hoping to do next Saturday. The head of the People's Democratic Party is the president's biggest rival. But he, along with others in the opposition, fear President Buhari could be trying to rig the vote. In a moment, we'll have representatives from the two major parties to debate just that. But first, this report from Randolph Nogel.
Nigeria's presidential election is becoming more contentious by the day. The vote, less than 2 weeks away, is expected to be tight. But incumbent Muhammadu Buhari's dismissal of the country's top judge last month has roused an already fiery opposition. It briefly suspended campaigning over the move.
It's a broad-day murder of democracy, and we do not accept that. And we want to be in solidarity with the rest of the Nigerians, that we are not happy. It is not healthy for our democracy.
The opposition says Buhari's decision to sack the Chief Justice was illegal. Nigeria's top judge could be pivotal in deciding a disputed election outcome. Both Buhari's camp and that of the main opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar, have accused each other of whipping up unrest in the lead-up to the election.
Having realized that their fortunes have dwindled badly ahead of the polls, the desperate opposition is orchestrating widespread violence.
The PDP calls on Nigerians to hold President Buhari directly responsible for any escalation of violence in our nation.
Abubakar has said dismissing and replacing the Chief Justice is an act of dictatorship. But Buhari has defended his decision, saying it's illogical to link the judge's suspension with the election.
You see, the critical infrastructure that has been put in place by Buhari administration in these 3 years surpasses what PDP has been doing for the past 16 years.
Buhari's government replaced the rival People's Democratic Party, or PDP, which had held power for 16 years. He was credited with making strides against widespread corruption during his first term, but employment and security remain pivotal campaign issues. Buhari now risks losing votes in the northeast, one of his traditional strongholds. A resurgent Boko Haram has launched recent attacks there and displaced tens of thousands of people. The government is scrambling to get those who fled registered to vote.
Everything is for now scattered, but we'll try our best to see how we organize all these scattered locations and scattered voting population.
But Buhari's opponent has focused mainly on the sluggish economy and unemployment. Nigeria has the highest rate of extreme poverty in the world. Nearly half of its people live on less than $2 a day. And it's only expected to become worse as the country faces a major population boom. Abubakar, a former vice president and businessman, is positioning himself as the man who can get Nigeria's oil-rich economy back on track. Buhari may be in danger of losing his office. To win, he'll need to persuade voters of two things: that he can improve their financial fortunes, as well as strengthen the institutions that underpin Africa's largest economy. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Abuja by Ade Omole. He is the leader of Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress Party in the UK. In Lagos is Segun Shawumi. He's the spokesman for the opposition campaign for the PDP's candidate, Atiku Abubakar. And in Geneva is Babar Baloch. He's the UN Refugee Agency's spokesman for Africa. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Ade Omole, let me start with you. Why should Nigerians continue to give the APC and President Buhari a mandate to rule?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for actually having me on the show. In 2015, we did promise that we were going to be looking into three major things. First was on security, second was on anti-corruption, and thirdly was on the economy. Now, on those three promises, we have achieved a lot, and that's why we're going back to the electorate to actually renew that mandate for us. And from the feedback we've got, because we've been traveling around the country since I arrived in Nigeria, Nigerians are actually appreciative of what we've done to date, and obviously they will be renewing the mandate for the APC. On security, if pre-2015, we had close to about 17 local governments under the control of Boko Haram. That's no longer the case. On anti-corruption, we've got close to about 800 successful cases and close to 1 trillion naira actually recovered from looters. That's from the previous opposition party, as in the previous government. And looking at the economy itself, we've been able to diversify the economy. Agriculture is actually on the way up. We're also we've also been able to put together lots of infrastructure across the country, and that's also boosting the economy. Okay. And the ease of doing business is also ongoing. And these are the achievements, some of the achievements that this APC-led administration has been able to put together in less than close to 4 years. So.
Okay, Segun Shawumi. So we've heard from the ruling party. Adeomole believes that on security, on anti-corruption, on stabilizing things, including the economy, they've done well. What can your candidate, Atiku Abubakar, offer that Buhari hasn't achieved so far? What can he offer that's any different?
First things first, thank you. Thank you very much. First things first, let me say that on all of the three areas where they now have accepted as their business to be evaluated, they have failed. In terms of security, the Northwest was only the area where there was challenges before. Right now we have challenges Northeast was where there was a challenge. Right now you have the challenge in the Northeast and the North Central. You have it also in the Northwest. In terms of the economy, obviously they failed woefully. You have more people in poverty. Nigeria is not a poverty capital and all of that. You know what we've done with unemployment. They've moved it to about 20.3 million people. In terms of building up the economy, we are in a recession, we're struggling. Inflation is outperforming their own growth, so definitely we're still in a negative growth, as almost like a recession. That's what's that. What are we bringing to the table differently? First things first, for you to be able to unite a nation, you must have the mindset of a leader who represents all. You cannot be parochial, you cannot be tribal, you cannot be ethnic, you cannot run around only with friends and family that you're familiar with. Atiku is a detribalized Nigerian, and he brings that to the table heavily. You need to be able to create jobs. For you to create jobs, you need to know what job creators are looking for. Who are those that are the drivers of an economy that can help you create jobs? Clearly, it is the private sector mostly, and a little bit of government. In terms of private sector, it takes somebody who has a good experience in creating jobs in the private sector to be able to use that experience to leverage in how to calibrate the economy of the country and make private sector players come back in. Okay. In terms of security, that's where they've even done the most dismally. We will be reworking the architecture completely. We'll be doing a complete audit of the security systems of our country, and we will restructure Nigeria to give it the opportunity to be able to grow. Okay. And certainly, we will grow the economy. Okay. Because we believe for us to be able to get Africa and Nigeria working, you need to have a more robust economy that creates more space for private sector players to be able to do the flip and leverage the growth in the economy, working in tandem with our people, creating value for them and making sure that Nigeria is sustainable and carries its own role within Africa and be at peace with itself.
Well, things like good governance, security, and the economy are all interrelated. They send people on the move, they create uncertainty and instability, and it creates the space for the UN to come in. Baba Baluch, I know you would love to be in a situation where the UN doesn't have to do any work in Nigeria, but it does. So you've heard from the two political sides here, As we look ahead towards the election, what worries you the most as the UN?
Our mandate is humanitarian, and our focus is on displacement situations. We work hand in hand with people of Nigeria, with the government of Nigeria, and with authorities in terms of focusing on people who have been displaced. So that the effort is there. We were just recently in Abuja with everyone launching the humanitarian response plan for some 1.8 million displaced people who are inside Nigeria, and also around 270,000 Nigerian refugees who are in the neighboring countries. Just in past few weeks, we have been handling a situation where around 40,000 refugees from Nigeria's northeast Borno state have arrived, mostly in Cameroon, and of some of them in Chad as well. So as humanitarians, we would really like to see these people, if they are able to go back to their homes and places. But in terms of the challenges for this displaced population, the challenges still remain, and they are there.
Right. So, Ade Omole, you signaled the security situation as a success in terms of the policy of President Buhari and this administration. I remember covering this story when he became president. Correct. He said, I'm going to secure the country. But if Boko Haram's still alive, we have trouble in the northeast, Correct. We have Islamic State, West African province, we have those clashes in Nigeria's central states between the farmers and the nomadic herders. And as we heard from the UN representative, almost 2 million people displaced. Can you honestly say that the security situation's under control and it's been a successful policy?
It is a successful policy. It's an ongoing policy, and we're also looking at actually revamping what we're actually doing at this present time. Now, we're not where we should be, but we've actually left where we were pre-2015. If you remember, I did state that pre-2015, there were close to about 18 or 19 local government areas in Borno, in the northeast, under the control of Boko Haram. That is not the case anymore. Now, we still have challenges, but we're actually looking into that, and we're looking to resolve that. And that's why the president, who has actually been doing a fantastic job, has actually been meeting with colleagues in other neighboring countries to ensure that we stamp out terrorism in that part of the region. And that's exactly why we've also been able to order the necessary hardware to actually combat the terrorists. We're actually retraining the army. We're actually working with international communities to actually ensure that every single terrorist or the act of terrorism is actually stamped out in that part of the country. So yes, we're actually moving forward compared to where we were 16 years ago. It is a good thing that we're doing, and we will continue to do that, and we're sure that, and that's one of the reasons why we're saying that we're actually taking the country to the next level, whereby we will have actually been in a position to actually stamp out terrorism from Nigeria.
Okay, so Segun Shawumi, looking at it from that perspective, Boko Haram has not been eliminated, but it has been crippled in many ways. A lot of their land that they had originally eaten up has been taken back by the Nigerian government, by the Nigerian army. They have managed to secure large parts of the country. So why not give them another 4-year term so they can finish the job?
Nigeria and the spaces in Nigeria under their watch has become a bloodbath that everybody can signpost where challenges are around them. Boko Haram, like terrorism, like you will know, requires that you work a little bit harder. But the most important thing is that government must recognize it has to contain it within the areas where it met it. Unfortunately for them and the mishandling of the entire military, the whole operation, it has metastasized from the northeast. It's in the north central, which has killed a lot of our people there under a farmer-headsman clash. It has moved to the northwest, where you now have places like Zamfara, Sokoto, and Co., including Katsina, where we're now losing people to mindless killing. And the worst is that the military itself, who hitherto could defeat Boko Haram and chase them out, are suddenly now being killed daily because those who are supposed to ensure that the armed forces is well funded, that the terms of reference and the funding of the welfare of the officers is intact, that the tactical command between the air and the ground forces, the Army and the Air Force, is in place, that the kind of peace you need in the armed forces, where people know when it is time for them to be retired, when they are promoted, the entire thing is just a mess. But more importantly, what causes crime in any society, be it terrorism or otherwise, some of it can be slightly ideological, but the feeding ground for it is poverty. And on the score of poverty, the Buhari administration have failed dismally. You know and I know and the whole world knows that the international community and benchmark agencies have now said that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world, poorer than India, even though we have a smaller population. We have more people worked out of school children. We have more people who don't have a job or who have lost their job. They have lost 20.3 million jobs under their watch. They have ensured that the value of our currency has been deflated and has gone down. Inflation has galloped under them. They have ensured that we are now one of the countries in the world that are considered likely to implode and become a failed state. They have ensured that now nepotism and tribalism has been elevated to ground principles of state. They have generally made the country become a country of us versus them.
So, Shegun, let me get a response from Ade then.
That, and there's too much poverty.
I think it's quite easy to say that.
The cost of living is too high.
It's quite easy to sit down in Lagos
let
and
Ade
say
come in
all
and
that.
respond. Ade, come in, respond.
This is the same opposition party. Oh, sorry. This is the same opposition party that has actually caused all those problems that he has actually listed. What we're doing at this present time is actually clearing the rot that the same poverty development party actually created in this country. I'm quite happy that he's actually talking about children out of school. I'm quite happy that he's talking about security and the fact that they lost the size of, they lost 17 local governments to Boko Haram at that time. And that's exactly where they caused where we're at this present time. They are the PDP, or the Poverty Development Party, is the reason why where we are at this present time. So it's quite unfortunate and a bit reckless for the opposition spokesperson to come on air and start listing issues and problems and challenges of the country that was actually created by the same party. That is why the party was actually voted out in 2015.
It's interesting that you say this.
And we've been able, at this present time, close to 4 years, to ensure that we correct the rot and actually lift people out of poverty. And that's what the SIP is actually doing. The social investment programs, that's exactly what we're doing with the SIPs, because this party is a people-oriented party that is actually committed to actually lifting Nigerians out of poverty.
It's interesting that you say this, because we're going to do more Nigeria elections programs in the coming weeks, because there's a third way or an alternative voice that we want to get on as well in the future, where people speak about both the PDP and the APC, both sort of coming from the same political petri dish, and young people want an alternative. They find that perhaps there isn't enough political pluralism within Nigeria, but that's for a separate discussion. This will be the appetite whetter for now. I want to go back to Babar Baloch from the UN for that perspective, the humanitarian perspective. Babar, when you look at Nigeria, are the challenges greater in terms of security or development?
I think we need to keep in mind that we need to separate the two issues in terms of politics and humanitarian issues. So we look forward in terms of engaging everyone and trying to get support for those desperate displaced people, either inside Nigeria or who are outside in the neighboring countries as refugees. And that's why the call is beyond Nigeria as well, with 2.4 million people affected by the violence that has been unleashed during last so many years. And in the latest round, what we saw in Run, where some 35,000 desperate refugees had to flee the latest attacks of the Boko Haram and were seeking refuge in Cameroon. People were desperate, traumatized, women and children. So we need to focus in terms of how to alleviate the suffering of these desperate people. So the call goes back to Nigeria in terms of support and working hand in hand, but also beyond that. We keep calling on countries in the region, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and others, to keep their borders open, because whenever insecurity comes in and desperate people are attacked, they need to find safety and security.
Right. And that's a sober reminder of the people who have been suffering as a result of the instability in recent years. And just a reminder, beyond the two candidates, Buhari and Abubakar, or the two main challengers, likely candidates, it's a country of 190 million people with 84 million registered voters. This is a mammoth election. We'll be keeping a close eye on the election. Adeomole, Shegun Shawumi, I hope you both come back onto the program as we continue to cover Nigeria's election. And Babar Baluch, I thank you very much for the UN humanitarian perspective. I've got to move on, but I thank you all again, once again, for being here on the Newsmakers. After the break, if you thought Nigeria's election was big, wait till you see India's. The world's biggest democracy heads to the polls in a matter of months. Could the opposition's promise of a universal basic income end the BJP's grip on power? And from the biggest election to one of the smallest, we take a look at Ukraine ahead of their vote next month. Could a comedian really become the next president? India is the world's largest democracy, and one of the most pressing issues facing voters later this year is how to lift more than 70 million Indians out of poverty. The opposition believes it has the answer: a guaranteed income for all. Rahul Gandhi, the head of the Congress party, says that if he wins the upcoming election, every poor person will get a cash handout. It's a radical approach aimed at eradicating poverty. But is it realistic? The ruling BJP says no. They want to know where the money will come from. So we're going to give the BJP a chance to ask them. But first, Haider Abbasi has this report.
Moral down होने का कोई ऐसा कारण ही नहीं है.
There is no reason for our morale to go down. We are confident and are moving ahead. In 2019, if there's one party that the country trusts and is connected to the people, it is us.
जनता के भरोसे पर समर्पित हैं हम लोग.
India's Prime Minister is leading a fight back. Just a year ago, there wasn't any doubt about his re-election, but now analysts aren't so sure. His party suffered a shock defeat in December. It lost 3 important states in regional elections: Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. They're now under the control of the main opposition, the Congress party, which is led by this man, Rahul Gandhi. Energized by the victory, Gandhi now has his eye on the biggest prize, the national election due in April.
The BJP has an ideology. We will fight against that ideology. We will defeat them. We have defeated them today, and we will defeat them in 2019.
But does Gandhi and his opposition alliance have enough support to claim India's highest office? Among the reasons for the BJP losing in December was discontent in the countryside. Farmers are angry and say they've been neglected. For any Indian government, getting the backing of farmers is vital. And it seems Gandhi knows this. He recently told a crowd of farmers that his party would give every poor person a guaranteed income if they come to power. So how realistic is this promise? At the moment, there are very few details. Congress hasn't explained where the money would come from. All existing social benefits will be replaced by the universal basic income. The BJP considered the UBI in 2014, but concluded it could only give $83 to each household, not enough to feed them. Gandhi is accused of stealing the BJP's thunder, which revealed its budget just days after the UBI plan. The government says it will give more than $10 billion to supplement the incomes of poor farmers. Despite the losses in December, the BJP still controls 17 out of 29 states. And although Modi has been damaged, analysts say he remains popular. So can Congress exploit its recent gains and remove Modi from power? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Well, to debate this, let's go to our guests now in New Delhi. Salman Soz is a member of the opposition Indian National Congress Party, and Sudesh Verma is a spokesman for the ruling BJP. Gentlemen, I thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. Salman, let me start with you. Is this universal basic income plan from Congress basically a gimmick, promising handouts ahead of an election?
Well, first of all, it's not a universal basic income. So what we are proposing is a minimum income guarantee for the poorest people in the country. So universal would be for everybody, including some of the wealthiest people in this country. And that's not what we are proposing. And it's certainly not a gimmick. I think people have, over the last 5 years of the Modi government, people have taken a massive hit, especially in rural areas. The poorer communities, small and medium enterprises are suffering. The government has, launched what is called demonetization, which led to a huge cash crunch in this economy. Also launched a terrible indirect tax called goods and services tax. That has had a contractionary impact. So people are suffering, and the Congress Party has to. And any government has to look after its people, and I think it is time for us to at least provide some dignity to the poor of this country. Of course, they need to do their work anyway. This is not going to be a full income. This is just going to be a floor. So we want a social protection floor because the government has failed them, and we need to kind of help them rise back up.
Okay, so Sudesh Verma, we had a lot of people from the BJP saying, where's the money going to come from? This is nonsense from Congress. But the BJP itself has announced a whole lot of measures which are, in many ways, somewhat similar, right? $13 billion allocated for payouts for farmers, pensions for informal workers such as rickshaw drivers, pullers, tax relief, incentives, and so on. So aren't you both trying to answer the same question? Clearly, there's a problem of poverty, which everybody knows there is, and they're trying to come at it from one angle, and you're trying to come at it from another.
You see, let me give you statistics of our last. We have been in power. The poverty was at 30 to 31%. Now it has come down to 5% in India, which is a massive thing to have happened in a country. You see, the then Prime Minister, late Rajiv Gandhi, who belonged to the Congress, had once said that only 15 paisa of the rupee comprises 100 paisa, goes to the actual beneficiary. And
so
85 paisa is
just one second. So poverty based on what metric? What's the baseline? What's the baseline metric?
I'll tell you. It's 137 rupees. 137 rupees. You see, it's all universal standards, it's world standards. You see, what I'm saying is, they said, because why it has come down, you must understand this. Because we have been able to take the government benefits to them directly. We have created a system by which loopholes are plugged, and 100% of the subsidy is reaching their accounts. So this has empowered them. Government has come out with an insurance scheme, which is the backbone, which gives kind of social security which was never available before. The government is giving the poor BPL families, we call it gas, gas stoves to them. We used to use firewood, and it used to cause a lot of pollution also and harm their own lives as well.
Let me ask you from a different perspective, Sudesh. Sudesh, let me ask you from a different perspective then, right? So what is the problem with what Congress is proposing? They're not saying it's universal basic income. They're saying for the poorest people, they want to have a baseline. They want to have a foundation so people don't slip into extreme poverty. Do you have a problem with that?
No, the problem is that Congress is promising something which the Congress doesn't know what the scheme is all about. On an election year, you can promise the moon because you know that you are not going to come to power the kind of popularity Mr. Modi has. They know it, so they can promise anything. I can take you example of Gujarat. The Congress promised everything, one house to every poor, and they got registered also, those voters. But they never won because people know that the Congress cannot deliver. What happened in Madhya Pradesh? They promised that they are going to waive off the loans. But what has happened? It has become a big scandal. So you can promise anything. You promise Garibi Hatao, Indira Gandhi.
And Salman, I'm gonna come back to you in a minute, right? But Sudesh, let me just for clarity, right? Because you're saying the policies over the past few years have been successful, and you're saying that Congress is being desperate by just promising things. Doesn't it sound as if the BJP is doing exactly the same thing in election year by allocating $13 billion in this budget for what can be deemed handouts for farmers, for rickshaw pullers, and for those within the BJP base? If the economic policy was so good over the past few years, why this desperation now?
You see, more than 90% of the people are in the unorganized sector. And something must be done to organize them. You see, if you see our budget, there is a pattern. In one budget, it was a rural budget. More than 50% of the allocation was done for rural areas. I'm talking about the last budget where 14,34,000 crore of rupees we allocated for rural areas, for creating rural infrastructure. We came with Ayushman Bharat, never before in the world such a healthcare scheme. So we have come out again and again with various schemes. When we have the money, you see, you can do so only when you have the money. You cannot promise without allocation. So we have allocated the money. We have seen our resources, and we found that there is enough resources to grant such a thing. We'll do that. And tomorrow, if we have more money, say thanks to the economy which is growing at 7.3%, if we have that much of money, then we are going to increase it further. We have given to farmers 6,000 rupees, per year. This is going to enable them to take care of the basic things like buying seeds and taking care of the markets.
So let's get a response from Salman. Okay, Salman, come in.
So, whenever you hear something from the ruling BJP, basically you should take it with a spoonful of salt. These guys are purveyors of fake news. And let me tell you how. Just what the BJP spokesperson was saying on poverty, for example. And you asked him a very good question. What is the metric? How do you, is it comparable data? First of all, when our government left, in the 2011-2012 survey, the poverty rate was listed at 21.9%. Okay, since that time, we haven't done a comparable survey. What he's referring to is a methodology organized by the Brookings Institution in Washington, which is a think tank, and they've come up with something which says poverty is declining. And of course, poverty is declining. It was declining before. In fact, in the 10 years that the Congress ruled before Prime Minister Modi's government came in, 140 million Indians were lifted out of extreme poverty. Now, obviously, they won't tell you all that because they're purveyors of fake news. This whole idea that this economy is doing amazing things and it's growing at 7 to 8%, as he was saying, and you asked him again, you asked him a very good question. If things are so rosy, why do you need to actually give out handouts to farmers? And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why specifically about farmers, because farmers are a big community in India. Almost 50% of our workers, are employed in the agricultural sector. What happened was that in 2014 and 2015, which were the first 2 years of the Modi government, we had drought in India. So farmers were suffering, and of course, no fault of Mr. Modi because there was drought. We didn't have enough rain. Then in 2016, as the economy was recovering, what Mr. Modi did was he did something called demonetization, basically withdrew 86% of the currency in circulation by value. That in a country which essentially runs on cash. So, of course, I don't know which jokers gave them this idea, and Prime Minister Modi, without consulting his expert, and he had some good experts in his government, not consult anybody, did not consult the finance minister, did not consult the chief economic advisor, did not consult the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, nobody. And they did this. And basically, what do you expect? Of course, the economy is going to suffer.
Okay, so let's get.
2007,
so hold on.
In 2017, they had this the GST, and that created another problem for the economy. So right now, the farmers are saying, we are done with you. And in fact, the 3 states went to election recently. They lost all 3.
Okay, so let's ask Sudesh for a response. Sudesh, the argument.
Now they're going to give the farmer 17.5 rupees per month, which comes basically about 3.5 rupees per family member in a farming community.
Okay.
That is what they're offering them. It's a slap in the face, and the people in the country and the farmers in particular are sick and tired of them.
Okay, so let's bring in Sudesh. Sudesh, so the argument is you guys are responding to self-manufactured problems of bad policy over the past few years. Respond to that.
Okay, let me first come to the political situation. That will give you answer to most of the things what he has said. If we were doing that bad, if demonetization has been that bad, if GST has been that bad, it has impacted negatively. Our economy would not have grown. And politically, these people would not have joined hands to dethrone Mr. Modi. If Mr. Modi was unpopular, if our policies have been unpopular, then Mr. Modi will go down in any case. So why to come together and try to dethrone him? Because you know that he has delivered to the people and people are with him. And all these people are ganging up because they want to hide their acts of omissions and commission which they committed when they were in power, and they thought that when Mr. Modi comes, nothing is going to happen to them. And you see, statistically, if you see what we used to talk, the whole world used to talk about black economy, parallel economy, running India. So for checking that, we had to go for demonetization. And only a Prime Minister of Mr. Narendra Modi's stature, who had complete trust in the people, could take such a step. The banks were not having money, and these people of the Congress, they used to give loans to their cronies on phones without any collateral. And this happened with the banking system. So we brought a lot of accountability in the system. And because of our various acts which we have brought in, because of the law we have brought in, legislations we have done, today, the ease of business, we have jumped almost half of what the rank was. The whole world is talking about India is a development story. We are growing at a faster rate than China. And now that the economy is taking off, the Congress knows that nobody is going to support them. So they'll try to, but we are very confident that we are going to come back to power with a thumping majority, more seats than what we won in 2014.
So, Salman, they're trying to clean up the corruption and the heavy, sludgy bureaucracy that they inherited from you. That's the claim.
Well, like in everything, like I said, the BJP has every right to make that claim. They have every right to say that Prime Minister Modi is so popular that he's going to win hands down, and why do the opposition parties have to come together? The reason the opposition parties have to come together is because the BJP is fundamentally damaging our country, our constitutional democracy. And by the way, remember that the Prime Minister's party is in alliance with scores of parties. I mean, they're a big alliance as well. But the Prime Minister himself, through his party, they have all the political muscle, they have all the power of investigative agencies, and they basically control all the media, and they're still losing. That's the beauty of Indian democracy. In spite of controlling everything, in spite of controlling all levels of power and the media, they're still losing. Now, they talk about how the Congress has had all this, black money and corruption and all this stuff. They've been in power for 5 years. Not a single person has been convicted. Not a single leader of ours is convicted. If it was so black and white, then they could have done it. They've failed to do it because they have no case. On the other hand, their government is embroiled in one of the biggest corruption scandals in the history of independent India. The Rafale fighter jet, which is produced by France, supplied by France. We had a deal to buy 126 fighter jets from Dassault. And what happened? The Prime Minister Modi changed the deal at the very last moment. Instead of getting 126 fighters that we needed, signed a deal for 36 fighters, and in the process, actually helped one of their friends get business worth billions of dollars. Okay. See, there's a reason. I don't know if you guys read the Oxfam report on global inequality. What does that report say? That 9 individuals in India own as much wealth as 50% of the country's population. And by the way, inequality in India has been growing. It has been growing over time. Sure. It grew even under our time.
But some of the arguments also that the arguments also that inequality has been growing worldwide, in the United States, in India, in the UK, and so on and so forth, right?
I agree. I agree. That's exactly what I'm saying. It was growing under our time too. But if you notice how wealth has shifted in recent years, in the last 5 years, what their methodology is very simple. Let us get together with a few business houses, let's create oligarchies, and let us control this country through media and money power. Unfortunately for them, people had high expectations, no doubt about it. Even I had high expectations. But this government totally failed, squandered a unique opportunity to transform the Indian economy, and they're going to pay at the ballot box. They're going to lose this election, I guarantee you.
Okay, Sudesh, come in.
You see, it's very interesting. If you do your own research, you will find the truth about Rafale. No less than the Supreme Court, India has attested to what we said, and that nothing wrong has been found out. So one lie which the Congress president spreads, and everybody speaks. Please don't intervene. I did not intervene when you were spreading the lies. But when you do your research, you will find out the truth. We have tried to bring the system back to where it should be. There should be transparency. There should be accountability. And you must know that
whatever. Can I ask you about the jobs report? Can I ask you? You say transparency and accountability. So we have 2 top statistics commissioners resigning in protest over what appeared to be a concerted government attempt at gagging the jobs report. Why does the government have something to hide?
this gagging thing is perception. It's not reality, because you will have to prove that actually the government took that decision. This is the perception which the opposition is trying to create. You see, on job front, I can tell you upfront that when the economy is growing so fast, then do you think that jobs will not be created? Has it ever happened that economy will grow and job will not grow? Yes, even if you're talking of government jobs, of course, jobs are not growing in the government sector. And jobs are growing in the private sector. When we have given 14 crore of individual loans to private entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, then they are definitely going to create job in the unorganized sector. And when these statistical institutions calculate jobs, they don't look at these jobs created. We promise that we'll give work to people, and people are happy, trust me. Although they bore the brunt of demonetization and initial doubts about GST, there has been a total consensus. You should ask the Congress spokesperson that why is criticizing the GST when they're part of the GST concept.
Okay, the good news is that we're going to find out from the voters in the next few months. Salman, I'm asking for extra time, so briefly, please, in 20 seconds, your response.
You know, these statisticians resigned because they prepared a report and the government was not willing to get that report out, because we have a serious problem of unemployment and the government can be in denial. We have a 45-year high of unemployment, according to this report which was leaked. Now, these guys, basically, these are statisticians, they're not politicians. So they do their work, and the government says, no, we will not let this come out. And of course, they resign because they are dignified people. Now, if it is the government's contention that there is job creation, then please let me ask you this. Just recently, the Railways Department has advertised 65,000 jobs. 26 million people applied for those jobs, including PhDs. These are just regular menial kind of jobs. 26 million people applying for 65,000 jobs. Does that sound to you that this is a great economy?
Okay, that's a good question.
One day before the budget, the government announced revised GDP data, and according to that revised GDP data, the Indian economy grew fastest at 8.2%, fastest in the last 5 years during the year of demonetization, when there was a cash crunch in the economy.
So listen, you posed an interesting question.
They say that we become data manipulators, and that is the damage that Mr. Modi has done to India and its reputation.
Okay, so Salman, you posed an interesting question. You know what? We're going to pick up on that question the next time we have this debate. This election's not going away anytime soon. We've got an interesting few months ahead. A country of over 1.3 billion people. As far as I understand, I think there's going to be about 1 million polling stations during this election. It's absolutely mammoth. It's more polling stations than some countries have populations. So, I mean, this is fascinating. And clearly the economy is a massive issue here. We're going to have you both back on the program. I'm looking forward to it. But for the moment, I do thank you, Salman Soz and Sudesh Verma. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.
This feeling of deep responsibility towards my country in front of current, past and future generations prompted me to decide to run again for the office of President of Ukraine.
It may be one of the smallest elections this year, but they may have the largest number of candidates. Initially, more than 80 people put their names forward to become Ukraine's next president. But who are the front runners? Well, first, there's this man, the incumbent Petro Poroshenko. He announced his re-election bid, telling thousands that Ukraine would apply to join the EU by 2024, reaffirming his push for closer ties to the West. And the president's approval ratings have plummeted in recent years. So who's the favorite? Well, if polls are to be believed, that's former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. She's promised to fight corruption and improve the economy, something her critics say she failed to do when she was in office. And then there's the outsider, comedian turned politician Volodymyr Zelensky. He's played a president on TV, but could he actually get the job for real? Whoever wins will have a tough task at hand. The war in eastern Ukraine rages on, while relations with Russia show no signs of improving. Well, to discuss the upcoming election is Vladimir Yermolenko. He joins us from Kiev and is an expert at Internews Ukraine and Ukraine World Group. And in New York is Ukrainian-American political and cultural analyst Andrei Dobryansky. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Vladimir, let me start with you. So we look at the front runners. You've got Petro Poroshenko. Everybody knows Poroshenko, well, at least from the outside. You have Tymoshenko. Everybody knows her, at least from the outside. And then you've got this guy, Zelensky, a comedian. What does that say about what people want? Is there an anti-establishment undercurrent going on in Ukraine?
Well, we can say that, of course. Ukraine is not that different from many other countries of the world. It is true that Euromaidan of 2014 has provoked many hopes that the country will change, and it is changing under President Poroshenko, but maybe not as fast and not as radical, substantial as many would want to. Therefore, Poroshenko is under huge criticism, and of course, he is a bit fragile, and therefore there are lots of many other candidates. Mr. Zelensky is, we can say, is a nowhere man. Is a really very famous comedian, but he has no experience in politics, and he is backed by one of the most powerful oligarchs in Ukraine, Mr. Kolomoisky. But his popularity is like he has this image of a simple guy, a simple person who is not from the establishment. And recently he launched a movie which is called The Servant of the People, and this image of president which would be a servant of the people, it's kind of a very interesting and very maybe also worrying trend that people from mass media and people from mass culture are basically able to persuade citizens that they are the candidates.
Right. Andrei, has Poroshenko done a good enough job to earn the right to have another crack of the whip?
I think we'll see in 2 months what the polls say at that point. I think you hit on the nail on the head with anti-establishment. Even the frontrunner, as you mentioned, the former Prime Minister Tymoshenko, is still her lead is 20%. That means that 4 out of 5 Ukrainians would not like her to be president. So if that's the front runner, you have a wide open field. You do have these sentiment of not wanting to vote for an incumbent. But as we know throughout the world, that sentiment is quite popular up until the day you head to the polls. We are quite confident that, I am at least quite confident that given the amount of candidates in this first round, that we will very likely go to a second round of elections, as Ukraine has every time except for the last one. And in that case, it'll really be very interesting because Poroshenko, the self-proclaimed hero of the Ukrainian church, getting independence for the Ukrainian church, will have his second round, if he's likely to make it to the second round, on either Easter Sunday in the West or Palm Sunday, a very high religious holy day in the East. So.
Yeah, interesting little bit of trivia there. Andrei, the European Union and NATO and membership within those two exclusive clubs, is that still the holy grail for Ukraine? Is that at the heart of all the issues when it comes to this presidential debate?
I think that we've seen a dramatic shift in the Ukrainian populace, popularity not just within public polling, but also within elected officials in Ukraine, that is the direction Ukraine is going in. And that is certainly the direction that Poroshenko has championed. Every one of his actions leading up to today has shown that he would like that to happen. For the rest of the country, or rest of the candidates, we really can't tell what they're going to do because there's not as much confidence in their record in terms of joining NATO. So I believe the West is quite satisfied. The IMF has been satisfied. The G7 recently proclaimed that the changes to the Electoral Commission that were enacted in November were up to their standards. So there's a lot of positive things happening with both the parliament and the presidency in Ukraine, including the shift towards NATO. It depends if the populism, as you mentioned, anti-establishment, will explode that entire scenario.
So, Vladimir, is the populism and anti-establishment rhetoric, I caution using that word rhetoric, but what we heard from someone like Zelensky, where he said that he would seek a settlement in the Donbass at any price, and stuff like that, which is not what you traditionally hear from someone like Poroshenko, is that butting heads with someone like Poroshenko, who's completely pro-West and is pushing ahead with NATO and EU membership?
Look, Zelensky is a very, paradoxical guy because compared to Tymoshenko and Poroshenko, for example, his stance on Donbass is really much softer. I mean, he said in a recent interview that he would openly discuss with Putin, put something that Ukraine wants, and then hear what Putin wants. But we don't really know what he's gonna do. He's backed, as I said, by Mr. Kolomoisky, who is very anti-Russian oligarch. So basically, I think we see on these elections that pro-Russian forces are still very weak in Ukraine. And if we talk about pro-Russian forces, it's basically not Zelensky, but people like Boyko, who is backed by Mr. Medvedchuk, who is Putin's closest ally. So it's still the debate really about what is the right, what is the most correct way to deal with Russia, and what is the most correct way to proceed with the European integration.
Andrei, who would Russia want to win?
Russia has given sort of an endorsement to Poroshenko by saying he is the person they would least like to win. So that certainly will be factored into his campaign materials. As far as Zelensky, I think the interesting thing, as my counterpart has pointed out, is that there are financial backers for him. He is the only candidate who is not independently wealthy. Ukraine does not have an election system that finances candidates to the extent that they can actually win. So it's only been independently wealthy candidates who have won in the past. And so the pressures onto a candidate who would be beholden, whether it's oligarchs, as were mentioned previously, but anybody really, in terms of who would be influencing him behind his funding, would be the key question for a candidate like that. As opposed to Tymoshenko, who's independently wealthy, although she recently declared that she only makes $11,000 a month. We know that both her and Petro Poroshenko do have their means to be self-sufficient in that respect.
Okay, so it's not just the Brits and the Europeans looking forward to the spring and the end of March for big news in their countries. We're going to keep a close eye on Ukraine's presidential election. This is going to be short and sharp for now. We'll invite you two back on the program later on as we build up our coverage towards Ukraine's presidential election. But for the moment, gentlemen, I thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. And that's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, Malaysia is stripped from hosting a major sporting championship for not allowing Israel to compete. Was it a sign of solidarity with Palestinians or bad sportsmanship? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.